What if the person you thought was the criminal turns out to be the hero? That's exactly what happened in this shocking real-life story. It all started with a routine traffic stop, one that escalated quickly into an arrest. The officer, believing he was doing his duty, detained a man who, at first glance, seemed guilty of nothing more than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But here's the twist. This man wasn't just any ordinary civilian. He was a U.S. Army commander, a man with a powerful and unexpected backstory. The more the story unfolds, the more questions arise. Why was he really stopped? Who's really in the wrong here? And what happens when an officer's assumption is challenged in the most unbelievable way? Stick with us, because this story has a shocking turn that you won't see coming. As the officer began questioning the man, something didn't sit right. His demeanor was calm, almost too calm for someone who had just been pulled over. His uniform, a crisp U.S. Army commander's attire, seemed out of place in such a tense situation. He wasn't a civilian, yet the officer didn't recognize him, which only added to the confusion. The commander explained that he was on a break, passing through the area, and had no idea why he was stopped. But the officer wasn't convinced. His suspicion grew, and before the commander could explain further, he was handcuffed and thrown into the back of the squad car. What the officer didn't know, though, was that this commander wasn't just a decorated soldier. He was involved in something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. The truth was far from simple, and it was about to unravel in a way no one expected. As the commander sat in the back of the squad car, he remained eerily quiet, his mind racing. He knew this situation could escalate quickly, but he wasn't about to reveal his true identity just yet. There was something off about the officer's attitude, a sense of distrust that went beyond the usual protocol. Was it because of his uniform? Or was there something deeper at play? Meanwhile, back at the police station, the commander's absence didn't go unnoticed. His fellow soldiers, who were stationed at a nearby military base, had already started looking for him. They were trained to follow a strict chain of command, and not hearing from him after a routine check-in was highly unusual. As they started digging into his whereabouts, the officer's own superiors began asking questions. Was this just a case of mistaken identity, or was there something far more sinister at the heart of this encounter? Everyone involved was beginning to wonder who was really in control here. The minutes dragged on in the small interrogation room. The officer, now alone, paced back and forth, replaying every detail of the traffic stop. Something was nagging at him. The commander's calmness, his refusal to show fear, it didn't add up. Was he hiding something? Or was he just too good at staying composed under pressure? Outside the station, whispers began to spread. The commander's colleagues were circling closer, but they couldn't act just yet. They were waiting for the right moment, knowing the stakes were too high to make a mistake. In the meantime, the officer received a call from his superior, a direct order to hold the commander until further investigation. As he hung up, a new wave of doubt washed over him. Was he about to make a huge mistake? The pieces didn't fit, and every instinct told him this wasn't just about a simple arrest. Just then, the commander, seemingly out of nowhere, spoke up. His voice cut through the silence, dropping a bombshell that none of them could have anticipated. The officer froze, his hand hovering over the phone, as the words hit him like a shockwave. The commander's voice, steady but filled with an edge of urgency, shattered the tension. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he said quietly, his eyes narrowing as he met the officer's gaze. The officer's heart skipped a beat. What did that mean? Before he could respond, the commander leaned forward, his tone dropping lower. "You think this is about a traffic stop? You think I'm just some random soldier?" The officer stiffened. A cold shiver ran down his spine, but he held his ground. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to hide the unease creeping into his voice. The commander took a deep breath before revealing the unimaginable. "I'm not just a commander. I'm investigating a threat to national security, and I've been undercover for months. If you release me now, you might be saving not just your job, but the lives of many innocent people." The officer froze. This wasn't just a man in uniform. He was wrapped up in something much bigger, something far more dangerous. And now the officer was caught in the crossfire. As the tension built, a chilling thought crept in. Was this arrest part of a much larger conspiracy? Or had he unknowingly stumbled into a world of military secrets, corruption, and imminent danger? The stakes were higher than ever, and neither of them was prepared for what came next. The officer's mind raced, the weight of the commander's words settling like a stone in his chest. He had no idea whether to believe him, but everything inside him screamed that this situation was far from ordinary. Before he could process further, his phone rang. His superior was calling back. "We've got a problem." His superior's voice crackled. "The commander's right. He's been working undercover for months. There's a national security threat tied to this arrest. Release him immediately." The officer's blood ran cold. He turned toward the commander, who was now standing tall, his composure unwavering. The officer rushed to unlock the handcuffs, but just as he did, the door burst open. A team of heavily armed military personnel flooded into the room. The officer barely had time to react before they seized the commander and restrained him. Confusion took over as one of the soldiers turned toward him. He's not just under investigation. He's been a target. The room fell silent as the officer tried to comprehend what was happening. His mind was still racing, trying to piece together the truth. But before anyone could explain further, the final twist came. The commander's face shifted subtly, his eyes narrowing as he met the officer's gaze. "You still don't know who's really behind this, do you?" he said, his voice low. The officer's stomach sank. Suddenly, he realized the most shocking truth of all. The commander wasn't just investigating the threat. He was part of it. The officer stood frozen as the commander's words echoed in his mind. The military personnel surrounding them slowly lowered their weapons, and the room became eerily quiet. The commander, once the hero, now stood as a figure of suspicion. He wasn't just uncovering a conspiracy. He was its orchestrator. The officer's head spun as he pieced together the shocking truth. The commander had played everyone, even his own colleagues, as part of a much bigger plan. In the following days, the investigation unraveled further, revealing layers of deceit and betrayal. The officer learned that his actions had unknowingly been manipulated to cover up a far-reaching military operation. As the commander was taken into custody, the officer's world flipped upside down. He had unknowingly become a pawn in a dangerous game. In the end, the officer walked away with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear: trust could be the deadliest weapon of all.